In the bunker, we're going to add some water effect and some walkways to our post-apocalyptic Fallout water treatment plant. In an earlier episode, we made these water treatment tanks for our Fallout or post-apocalyptic water treatment plant. And I've gone back and added some water effect. I used this and it turned out pretty well. It doesn't have a lot of depth. I imagine if I put several coats on there, I could probably get a little bit more of a depth appearance, but I'm going to run with it as is right now. I think it works pretty well. This was something that was suggested by Creatures, Caverns, and Crafting, which you should check out his channel too, because he's got a lot of good stuff on there. And it gave it a very good wet appearance, which combined with that kind of illusion of depth that we tried to achieve, I think came out pretty well. The only thing that it did was it kind of reactivated some PVA glue that I filled in a couple of spots with that seemed like they might have leaked. If that doesn't dry up on its own, I'll just go back and touch that up with some really dark green and cover that over, so not a huge deal. Yeah, I mean, it's not perfect, but this stuff, it's very forgiving. It took about 2 hours for it to dry to the touch. It's self-leveling, so almost all of the brush strokes came out. Because I put it on, it was not super even, and it smeared it or smoothed itself right out, and that was great. So I want to add some walkways across there, and one of the things I found in my stash of stuff was a box of these good things. So I took a couple of those and figured out that as is, they almost fit. They're just a tiny bit long on the bottom. So if you trim those bottom pieces, it will slide right down in there and be perfect. So we're going to do that on this one here. And I just took some end cutters, wire cutters, and just cut in a little bit. I cut it at an angle first, and it just cuts that plastic. It's very forgiving. And then just cut up, and you can kind of snap that piece off. I guess I could do it up here where maybe you could see. And don't forget to do the centerpiece. It's not like a Martha Stewart centerpiece, but it is a good thing. So, and you may have to take your hobby knife and get with the tape stuck to it. Just kind of clean those edges. There we go. All right, so we're going to do that to the other side and be right back. Okay, so both sides are done. It fits right down in there. And these are handy too because they'll also be very useful for other industrial type scenics, Necromunda, that sort of thing. You can put this in between other pieces. And I'll trim that down a little bit more so it kind of sits down in there a little better. There we go. So just get it to where it fits the way you want it, and then we will take and add just some granny grating. Now, the nice thing about this is it's pretty precisely aligned with the granny grating. So we will cut that out to fit and get that glued in there. You've got that cut out, and like I said, it fits very precisely. It's almost an exact fit. Then we can either hot glue this or super glue it down. Normally that's less than optimal, but in this case it's got the edges on the side that keep it from anything really catching it. So it should be fairly durable. And then we'll get ready to paint that. A bit of super glue, and we'll let that dry well, and then we will put some Mod Podge on there so that the paint will stick to the grinding grating a little better. You could use PVA glue if you don't have any Mod Podge, it's no big deal. You just want something that will kind of coat that and hold on there, and generally PVA or Mod Podge are your best bet. You could paint it straight, but it tends to wear off a little more. So I always suggest putting some PVA or Mod Podge on that sort of plastic because it's kind of devilish. To add a little bit of extra detailing, I made a ladder out of some of the larger hardware cloth that I had used in a previous project. It's pretty good for things like ladders and whatnot. So I'm going to cut some of these out, one for each end of that walkway for both of these, and then we'll paint everything and get it all assembled. Adding some Mod Podge, and in this case it's Mod Podge mixed with some paint. We're going to put that on there as kind of a primer for that. And we'll let that dry well, and then we'll go hit all of that and our ladders with some rattle can black primer and get ready to paint. We've got the ladders primed. We're going to go ahead and start with some dark gray and put a little bit of that on there. If we can find a suitable brush, there we go. I'm not going to bother painting the back side of it, just the front. It doesn't have to be super precise, just a little bit of color is all you really need there. Okay, we'll do those, and we'll come back with some other colors. I'm going to apply that same dark gray as a base color for these walkways. Alright, so we'll get those painted and we'll be back. Next we're going to overbrush this, all these pieces with a little bit of this Quaker gray. Just use a lighter gray. Don't get hung up on names of colors, just go with what looks pretty good. And just put a little bit of overbrushing just to kind of highlight that a little bit. You want to leave some of the shadows there. See, and you can, I don't know if it picks up on camera well, but there's a pretty good difference between the two once you do that. And then we'll do the same with the walkway. Give it a little bit of a highlight. So just do that on all the parts. Once we're done with that Quaker gray or light gray, I'm going to add just a little bit of silver as a very light highlight, just to give it kind of a metallic feel. We'll add that on and then we'll start applying some rust. For our rust effect, our first layer, we're going to use a nutmeg brown. Any kind of a red brown is fine. Again, don't get hung up on particular colors or brands or anything like that. And we're going to take, just use what you have. You can make almost anything work. Alright, we're going to use a sponge, maybe. If I can get that to quit sticking to it. And we'll one advantage of the sponge is it gives it a texture, so that's, you'll see me use it a lot. Okay, and be careful not to put your hands in it like I just did. Alright, so we'll continue on. The oldest areas of rust, we're going to apply a little bit of burnt umber once that dries a little bit. And I'm going to use the same sponge to get a little wet blending effect, so much the better. You just want to go kind of to the center of your brown areas. The brown being the oldest, and the rust would sort of spread out from there. Alright, so I'll just continue to do that. The final sort of highlight, I'm going to use this light orange color. Again, you can use any sort of bright orangey color for this, and you want to be kind of sparing. It's definitely less is more, but that's kind of your highlight for your freshest rust. Something that's been rusted a very long time probably isn't going to have a lot of orange on it, but it kind of helps sort of sell the idea that, hey, this is rusty, so, but not Rusty Venture. Alright, so we'll continue on with that. Alright, that rusted them up pretty nice, I think. They've got a very worn / abandoned look. Same thing with our ladders. Those will look real good against the corrugated iron. So get ready to assemble that. We're going to let that dry a little bit and we'll be right back. Alright, so we're just going to super glue those in place. I've left them off loose for now, but that way you can get a pretty good fit, and sometimes it'll help to put them up against one of the kind of the bulges in that corrugation so you can get a good bond. Alright, so we'll get that glued on and be right back. Alright, there are the ladders glued into place. There's our walkway, which comes off for ease of transport, plus you can use that on other terrain bits. So it's got multiple uses. But the biggest thing is just try to make sure you go roughly across the center. Just kind of eyeball it. And your little guys can fit on there. It's a tad narrow for their base, but not enough that I'm going to worry about it. If you put it together with some plastic I-beams or whatever, you'd want to be a little more mindful of that. But it's fine. You can put your minis on there. They can run across, get shot, die, fall in the water, all that good stuff. So hopefully that was of use. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you have a fantastic day.